Yes, it is entirely possible to lose weight, get lean, without tracking calories or macros at all. And that does not change anything from the fact that you have to be in a caloric deficit to lose weight, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I actually prefer, when I'm trying to get lean, to not track calories or macros to any extent. And I think a lot of other people prefer this too, because there are upsides and positives to tracking macros. Like, you'll probably reach your goals really quick because it's the most precise way to do things. However, on the downside, which I think outweighs the upside for most people, is the fact that it's very mentally taxing and sometimes socially inhibiting. So I'm super excited to share with you in this video today the 4 main tools that I have found that have allowed me to reach a caloric deficit without having to track. And these are just behavioral changes that you can implement into your own life that makes it way easier to achieve that caloric deficit without having to think too much about all of the specifics and macronutrients of the foods you're eating. And not only are all of these tips backed by scientific research, but they're things that I have experimented with myself in the 8 years that I've been into bodybuilding, as well as other people that I've worked with to help them get lean. So before diving into these tips, I want to talk about the caloric deficit that I mentioned earlier. And the fact of the matter is that if you ever want to get lean and lose weight, you have to be in a deficit. Without diving into the weeds too much on this, it simply means that you have to be expending more energy than you're intaking. So for instance, you can think of expending energy like exercising and what your body normally burns each day just to function. And then you can think of intaking energy like the food you take in. And in the most second grade math word problem type of way, if you are intaking more calories than you're expending, then you're in a caloric surplus and you will be gaining weight, and vice versa. And then just real briefly, macronutrients, those are just what makes up calories. So you have fats, proteins, and carbs. 1 gram of fat will always be 9 calories, 1 gram of carbs will always be 4 calories, and 1 gram of protein will always be 4 calories. So if you do want to spend a little bit of time tracking your calories and macronutrients, I say definitely go for it. It'll be a great experience. However, for the sake of this video, these tips alone should be able to help you achieve a caloric deficit without having to track at all. So my first tip is simply eat when you are hungry. I know that sounds super simplistic, but think about it for a minute. A lot of times in a country like America or the society that we're in, we're so used to thinking that we have to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And oftentimes we just find ourselves eating because it's time to eat. And what the research has shown is that when people end up doing that, they end up over-consuming calories and thus are in a caloric surplus. By no means am I saying starve yourself. However, I am saying it's okay to wait until you're a little bit hungry to eat your next meal. So whether that means waiting a bit longer to eat your first meal of the day, perhaps skipping breakfast, or it might mean more time in between meals, just listen to your body, figure out when you're hungry, and then go ahead and eat. I think that's why a lot of people find intermittent fasting helpful, is because they are just waiting oftentimes until they're hungry in that eating window until they eat again. And a little bonus tip on top of this one, might sound obvious too, but you do not have to stuff yourself. Instead, eat maybe half of your entree, see how you feel, and you can always go back and eat more later. But oftentimes you'll find that all you have to do is eat until you're not hungry instead of eating until you're super full. Now, tip number 2 on how to get lean without tracking at all is to do more cardio. And I know that might sound god awful, but cardio is one of the best ways to expend calories, and it's much better at burning calories than weightlifting is. Now, I'm not saying you have to do a ton of cardio or go run marathons every week. Instead, if you can just simply add 20 more minutes than what you're currently doing, that's a great place to start because it'll put you in more of a weekly deficit and help you get leaner. And I've found that one of the best ways to implement this and do more cardio is, one, just figure out cardio that you like. It can be basketball, it could be on a treadmill, but on top of that, the night before, or at least the week before, plan out when you're going to do your cardio for the week and stick to that. Because I found that if I don't plan it, I'm never just inspired the day of to actually get myself to do cardio, so I'd highly recommend planning it out. My third tip is to make more of your meals and go out to eat less often. So what research has constantly shown is that when people go out to eat versus going to a grocery store and cooking their own meals, the people that go out to eat more often tend to overconsume more calories. So this does not mean do not go out to eat with your friends, but instead just find a way to make more meals at home. I'd recommend finding a day of the week when it's best for you to go to the grocery store and then buy enough food to where you should be wanting to cook it throughout the week. Restaurants in America typically serve very calorically dense meals, and if you can just move some of those meals to at home, you'll be likely taking in less calories, achieving that caloric deficit, and thus finding it easier to get lean without tracking anything. And another thing that helps with going to the grocery store is finding meals that you really like that you can be more consistent with, because if you can find the meals that fill you up and that are not too calorically dense, then if you're constantly eating those, you're very likely to be in a deficit. And one other final tip to add on to that is try to avoid liquid calories. So this could be orange juice or beer or things like that. I'm not saying get rid of it entirely, but the less calories that you consume from liquid, the better off you typically are, because those calories generally don't fill you up more. And if you're not super full, you're probably going to intake more calories. And my final tip, and this one's definitely the most important, is to give yourself a longer period of time to accomplish your goals. I'm willing to bet that 99% of you watching this video don't want to just be lean for a few weeks. You'd like to be lean for the majority of your life. And so how do we make this a lifestyle? It's well known that the very best diet out there is the one that you can adhere to, the one that you can stick to for a long period of time. And too often people end up tracking their macros, getting all caught up in the details, feeling like they have to do everything perfect, and then they burn out and they don't stick to their diet. Instead, if you're not tracking at all, but instead focused on these little behavioral changes to get yourself in a caloric deficit, you have more room to mess up. So it's okay if you go out drinking one weekend and take in a lot of calories and eat 4 large pizzas, because if you've set your goal to be a long-term goal, to lose 10 pounds over the course of several months instead of 10 pounds in 2 weeks, then you can afford those little mess ups. And if you're able to afford that, then you won't mentally feel like you failed and you'll be less likely to burn out. So I'm telling you, please believe me on this one. I know that a lot of you have these super ambitious goals, and that's great. Give yourself more time to accomplish them. And in the long run, you'll really thank yourself, because you won't find yourself going to somebody's birthday dinner and feeling like you have to order a salad. It grants you a lot more flexibility. So if you implement those 4 tips, I promise you that those things will add up, and they'll definitely knock off a few hundred calories per week and help put you toward that deficit that you're hoping to achieve. And then if you give yourself a long period of time to do that, after several months, you'll be getting lean without having to track at all. And it's a super great feeling. With that being said, I hope you found some value from this video. And if you did, it'd be amazing if you dropped a like and potentially subscribe to the channel, because I have a lot of content coming out relating to fitness, competitive eating, productivity as a whole. And so if you find that interesting or you want to see something new from me, please subscribe and leave a comment of what video you would like to see next. And I hope you guys all have a phenomenal week.